Fabulous 103 FM, and this afternoon we get to interview Mark Gooding, Her Majesty's Ambassador to Thailand, the highest ranking British civil servant in Thailand, representing the UK and duly received by the Thai government as such a year ago. Formerly Ambassador to Cambodia and having held numerous high positions within the embassy system in China, Sri Lanka, Europe, the Maldives, and he's the master, I'm told, of 5 secondary languages, now including Thai. Herr Ambassador, guten Tag.
Guten Tag, mein Herr. Sehr gut, danke. Und Ihnen?
Mir geht's gut.
Gut.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure, it's great to be here, thank you.
We've interviewed over the years several British consuls. You've probably seen the recordings and you thought, my God. Some of them in excellence, some of them have been very forthcoming with answers, some less. But I do have some questions for you today. Some of them are posed by concerned expats. Now, I understand you're not involved in the day-to-day activities across the wide horizon of the embassy. But do you at least have a say in the way they're run here?
Well, I would say that I am fully involved in work across the embassy. We have a team of about 150 people. We have 10 different departments on the platform in Bangkok. We work on everything from security issues like organised crime and home office issues to economic issues. We've got a department for international trade here, a prosperity team that we can talk about later. But absolutely, I'm involved in setting the direction, but also being the public face of the embassy and meeting some of the senior government and business figures.
So do you, most decisions, are they made here, or do you find yourself more or less a mouthpiece for Whitehall, as some people seem to think that an embassy is today?
Well, we're here on the ground, clearly in Thailand, so we are the, if you like, the eyes and ears. We try to understand what is going on here, and we are the front line, so we try to influence what's going on here. But of course, as with any government ministry, the key decisions are taken by our ministers.
So when we announced on the radio we'd be talking to you, cool, we had an awful lot of emails regarding, I'll give you some ideas, the enormous delays in passport issuance, over 5 months it takes in some cases, pension issues where there's a disparity between expat pensions and the pensions that people get back in the UK, the perceived lack of assistance during COVID. I'm reading this because these are emails that have come in from a lack of availability of vaccines from the UK, even though they came here. Let's just take a look at these. Why isn't the embassy, and why aren't other embassies around the world, getting a fast-track program for passports for expats? The reason I ask you this, the inconvenience aside, there's a huge cost here in Thailand because we have to renew visas. And the immigration departments here in Thailand will only give you your visa to the extent of your passport. So a lot of people end up paying twice to get a visa, because they simply can't get their passports back from the UK.
I mean, the first thing I would say in relation to the passport delays is that I'm very sorry on behalf of the British government. This is very frustrating for British nationals around the world. There's nothing specific to Thailand, of course. So first of all, I'm very sorry about that. I would like to explain a little bit of the background, which is that normally the UK Passport Office before COVID got about 7 million applications a year. And what happened is during COVID, of course, fewer people applied, so those numbers went right down. And suddenly now that travel has reopened, demand for passports has gone up very quickly. So they're expecting about 10 million applications this year, and that's why there are quite long delays. So the Passport Office is currently adding resource to try to manage that, to get the queues back down. There isn't a sort of priority service available to British nationals overseas. The service is available in the UK, but not to British nationals overseas.
Perhaps it could be.
Well, I mean, by all means, we can report the problems back to the UK. At the moment, it's not available. So my key piece of advice to British nationals in Thailand is please check your passport expiration date and apply well before you want to travel. The Passport Office hopes to process passports in about 10 weeks. At the moment, it's a little bit, not a huge amount ahead of that, but anyway, sorry, not ahead, it's longer than that. So people should apply several months before they actually need to travel. And I think what happens sometimes, to be honest, is if people haven't used their passports because of the pandemic, they get to the point of travel and they suddenly realise that it's expiring.
Here, obviously, a big issue is getting your visas and 3-month reporting and stuff like that. But the biggest problem is that to travel to a lot of countries, and I think this country is one of them, you have to have 6 months left in your passport. So it doesn't really matter about the expiry date. As far as they're concerned, the expiry date, is 6 months before that. So really now we should be applying 10 months before the passport expires.
Well, you should work back from when you need to travel. If there's a 6-month requirement here for validity of a passport, then clearly you need to work back from that.
The world is, you've seen this, the world, everybody wants to be equal now. Everybody wants to be equal. It doesn't matter. Every single group is fighting for equality. And something that's being kicked up every time we do one of these meetings is we have a British consul here, a vice consul here, and now with you today. Every time we announce that we're going to meet somebody from the embassy, we will get 5 or 6 emails on the same subject. And we've never really got a good answer. So I'm hoping you can give us a good answer today. We're looking at a massive lack of equality between British who are resident in the UK and those who are domiciled elsewhere, i.e. Thailand, regarding pension increases. Now, if John lives in Bolton, Lancashire, he gets a pension increase. He starts getting his pension and it goes up at different times, he gets the increases. If John doesn't live in Bolton, Lancashire, but if he lives in Bangkok or Pattaya, whatever he gets to start with is what he's going to get for the rest of his life. It just doesn't seem fair. And an awful lot of people are pointing out, A, that it's not fair. The other thing that they're pointing out is expats, another drain on the NHS. My mother's 92. She is a drain on the NHS. She's costing them money, but people who don't live in the UK have actually saved the UK money.
Well, as you know, this has been a policy of successive British governments for many decades, I think 60 or 70 years now. I did realise you were going to ask me about this, Tommy, so I did look at the Hansard in Parliament in the UK before I came today and saw that the government was asked about this most recently last year. And in Parliament, yeah, so this is on the public record. And the view was that people move overseas of their own free will, and the system is exactly as you've described, that pensions are not uprated. So the key thing from our point of view as an embassy, obviously this is not our policy, this is the Department of Work and Pension in the UK, but as an embassy, our interest is in making sure that people are able to plan their finances for retirement. And when they do that, they need to work on the basis that their pension will not be uprated after they move to Thailand, or indeed many other countries.
It's not going to be uprated.
I'm saying it's not going to be uprated, exactly. Yeah. I know of no plan to uprate it, and that was very clear in the parliamentary answer from last year. So I think there are campaigns on this issue. It does go back to ministers and Parliament every so often, but from my perspective as an ambassador here advising British nationals, my strong advice would be to plan on the basis that the current situation is not going to change. If you're planning finances, that is the reality.
Now, I know you took over, you became the British ambassador this time last year.
Yep.
So you've been in the big office for 12 months. But you did take over in the middle of COVID, which isn't the ideal time to take over a new job. And I know that so that means that you inherited the situation of COVID, and you inherited whatever was being done to combat and assist with the COVID problems by the British Embassy. How well do you believe that the Foreign Office and the Embassy actually dealt with the COVID era and its effect on expats here?
Well, the first thing I would say about the effect is that COVID had a devastating impact on life in terms of human health, but also on the economy. And that was particularly felt here in Pattaya and other areas of Thailand that are dependent on tourism. And the recovery now is what we need to focus on. But in terms of what happened last year, you're right, it was a difficult time to arrive in Thailand, both because of the problems with the vaccination program, but also because of the lockdown that was in place for the first 3 or 4 months I was in the job. I would say we did 3 things. Number one is we got the Thai government to expand their vaccination program to include foreigners, and now I believe that everybody who wants a vaccine has access to them. Number 2, we got Thailand off the red list by working with the Ministry of Public Health to get them to increase their genome sequencing and testing. And number 3, we got vaccinations given in Thailand to be recognised in the UK. Now, this all took a number of months, but fundamentally, we got to a point in October where travel was open up again, where UK nationals had the ability to be vaccinated. So I'm pleased with that. It wasn't always apparent, and I absolutely recognise there were big problems in terms of getting access to vaccines at the beginning. But I think we've got there in the end.
One of the things that a lot of people always point out is the French. Now, Britain was at the forefront as a country. They were dealing with COVID. They had COVID programs and vaccination programs going into effect in the UK way before Europe. Europe still had its hands in its pockets. Yet the French managed to supply their embassy with vaccination packages for all French nationals, regardless of their status, here in Thailand. And everybody's pointed out that the UK did supply some vaccines, but never with the prerequisite that they were given to British expats.
Yep.
That's exactly right. I mean, there was a lot of misinformation last year. It was the French and the Chinese that offered vaccines to their nationals. No other country did, including the US, Australia, our sort of big partners. We gave a donation of 415,000 vaccines to Thailand last July. It was close to 500,000 at a point at which the most vulnerable were dying every day. And what we said is that the vaccinations have to be used to protect the most vulnerable. So they could be British, they could be Thai, but we were not going to prioritise people who were not in the most vulnerable category. But moreover, the issue about UK not providing a vaccination programme for British nationals, as I say, almost every country took the same approach. And our focus was on getting the Thai authorities to vaccinate British nationals, because obviously the Thai health authorities have hundreds of thousands of people working around the country. They can access people in rural areas all across the country. They've got the resource to do it. So the best approach here and elsewhere, and the approach taken by almost everybody, was to work with the Thai authorities to get them to prioritise the vulnerable and open up vaccinations to foreigners.
Were you also working with the Thai authorities to make sure that expats did get the free vaccination programme?
Yes, I was in very, very frequent contact with the Thai authorities from day one when I started the job. I have to say, the position was that at senior levels, the policy was to vaccinate foreigners. But at local levels, I think it was hospitals in many cases are saying, Thais only. So people were actually not implementing the national policy. There was also a big problem of supply, which, after I arrived in July, it took a month or two before supply really came online, including through AstraZeneca, of course, that we also worked with at the British Embassy. So it did take a while, but the policy ultimately was implemented, and British nationals, I believe, now have access to vaccines if they want them.
I have an email that's come in. I don't really understand it, but I need to share it with you. Please can you explain why, when you advertise jobs at the UK Embassy in Bangkok, why the salaries are so low and why you don't reach out to UK expats living here? I think it means you're looking for local hires.
Well, anybody can apply for our jobs, whether they're British, Thai or any other nationality. We will put on the job description what's required. Obviously, many of our jobs require Thai language skills as well as other specialist skills. But in terms of pay, we do comparator exercises with other international organisations, other embassies, business.
So you're paying the same?
So we pay a competitive rate for the responsibility of the job.
Now, we're pretty much aware that day-to-day dealings with deaths, jails, and all the things that are done by the consular services. And that's all under the British consul, they work for you. What is your day-to-day remit as an ambassador? What is your job?
Well, as I said before, I run an embassy of 150 people with at least 10 different teams. So we need to set a direction, which has got to be ambitious. We have huge opportunities for the UK and Thailand at the moment on the economic side, on the security side, but also within the region where the UK has just become an ASEAN dialogue partner. So in all of these areas, we need to set ambitious objectives, make sure we've got the resource to deliver them, and engage at the top levels of the Thai government, Thai business and Thai civil society to achieve them. And that's what I'm doing all day.
So you're working a lot with business?
Yep.
Okay. And there's been a lot of criticism amongst expats and tourists, writes this email, to the centralisation of the UK citizen services, basically way before your time, the closure of local consulates and the centralisation of the consular services, first to Bangkok and now it goes over to London when people call in. The email basically says, how do you see this as beneficial, not to the civil service, like cost cuts, but to the individuals out there?
Well, I think we need to look at how we deliver consular services across the world now. It's changed in the 20 plus years that I've been in the Foreign Office. Now we focus on the most vulnerable people. So we have very, very complex cases we deal with in Thailand of child protection, rape and sexual assault, deaths, illnesses, mental illness. So we really need to focus our resource on those. Number two, the call centre that we have enables us to respond to consular inquiries 24/7 in a way that we just couldn't if we had to run it all from Bangkok. So these are professional, trained consular officers who can offer assistance at any time of day or night. And the third thing is we're digitalising many of our documentary and notarial services. So for instance, if you want to get a marriage certificate or a birth certificate now, you can do it online. So I think there is a benefit there in terms of the 24/7 access, being able to get lots of your documents online. There are a few still that you need to come to the embassy for, but by and large, if it's a complex case with a vulnerable person, we were able to offer face-to-face support. So from Bangkok, we have a team that will go out anywhere in the country, any time of day or night, if there is a really vulnerable case, And we also have here in Pattaya, of course, an honorary consul, and we do have some others who are able to also to provide certain levels of assistance. So I think we're trying to prioritise those most in need and deliver a good service to everybody else as well.
Mark, you came here from Cambodia. What did you achieve? When you look back on the time that you were in Cambodia, what do you feel that you achieved while you were there?
Well, I like to think we achieved a fair amount in terms of, UK trade went up quite substantially to over £1 billion a year. We had the Khmer Rouge Tribunal that the British government was funding but also supporting, and they got their first 2 convictions for crimes against humanity of Khmer Rouge leaders. We were a very visible embassy, so we really boosted our social media outreach to Cambodians but also British nationals. We got to over 100,000 Facebook followers. So I like to think we were visible. I like to think we stood up for what we believe in, but also that we made a practical difference in terms of promoting trade.
From what I understand, when you started out in life, you were a teacher.
I was.
Sir, we should call you sir.
I'm not sure about that, yes.
Please, sir. So, and I understand that when you came here, one of the things that you were looking forward to doing was working with the British, what's it called? The British
Council.
British Council, which had announced prior to COVID that it was going to work very hard on a programme that would teach Thai teachers in Thai public schools, which, in case you're watching from England, the public school here is a state school. In the state schools, to improve the quality of English that's taught to children here, so that in turn when they turn into adults they'll be able to speak much better English than they do now. How's that programme going?
It's going well. The programme runs well. It's a teacher training programme, essentially. The idea being that the training we give to language teachers can then be taught to other teachers, so it's got a multiplier effect. And the programme we ran before COVID has already taught, I think it's about 12,000 teachers. Really? So the impact on students has been fantastic. And at the moment we're working on 2 things. Number 1 is working with the Ministry of Education on teaching curricula and best teaching methods, but number 2 is digitalising some of that teacher training.
How have you found the relationship with the Thai government and the way that you work with them?
Very good. Just last month I was back in the UK at our 2 high-level ministerial dialogues, our Joint Economic Trade Committee and our Strategic Dialogue, and we agreed a whole range of new cooperation from counter-terrorism to cyber to digital to health. So the relationship's in good shape. We have open discussions about many, many challenges, including some of the global challenges we face.
You visited Pattaya today. You're actually getting out and meeting people, which is not something we've seen by an awful lot of your predecessors. I presume this isn't just a PR job. Are you going to be doing this around the country?
That's right, I already have actually. I've been up to Chiang Mai, Hua Hin, Phuket. I was keen to come to Pattaya. I was thwarted by COVID a few months ago when I planned to come, but anyway, I'm here now. So we're just about to meet some of the British community, British business later tonight, and I've got various official meetings as well. So absolutely, this is about doing business and meeting people.
So you've been travelling around the area today. What have you seen and what are you going to take back and consider over the near future?
Well, one of the lasting impressions is I went to a care home, I went to the local hospital, and they have real challenges with British people who don't have insurance. So people who require healthcare or some kind of emergency treatment, they don't have insurance, so they can't pay for it. So that's one of my big takeaways from today, just the importance of everybody getting travel insurance.
Mark, I think you've been the best interview we've had by far from the embassy. I can understand why they gave you the top job. Mark Gooding, British Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us on Fabulous 103.
Thanks,
and I'm sorry we have to rush.
We've got people to meet. Thanks very much, Tommy.